Guys, I wanted to take some time in this video to talk about the gun that the military should have gone with, and I think that most of us are familiar with it, and that is the Glock 19X. This is not new to my channel. For any of you guys that have been following my channel for a while, you know that I've had this gun for several years. It typically stays in a duty holster wearing the TLR7. Love this gun, love this light, and it is the, I guess you could say, the version of the gun that Glock submitted to the U.S. military for the trials that Sig eventually won. This gun, in my opinion, is a better gun than the Sig. You know, besides all of the controversy, even before that controversy, I think that the Glock was a little bit better of a gun. One of the things that is different is that the Glock 19X does not have a manual safety. The one submitted to the military does. They chose Sig, and I think with everything that's going on, they may be regretting that choice. One thing that I want to mention as well is the triggers on Glocks. As far as a factory trigger on a Glock, the 19X, or at least the ones that I have of all of my Glocks, it has the best trigger. You know, it feels much lighter than some of the other Glocks that I have, and it could just be my sample. You guys let me know down in the comments below for those of you guys that are familiar with them. You do have that take up. And this is something that a lot of people have complained about, you know, the way that that Glock has that sponginess when you first begin pressing that trigger, but that is done deliberately. That take up on that trigger is doing a couple of things. One thing that it's doing is it is depressing the striker safety, and it is also finishing the cocking of the striker. You know, these guns, the striker in it is not cocked all the way, and when you press that trigger, that sponginess, that part of that sponginess is where it is pushing that striker back until you get to that wall. And then once you get to that wall, you continue to build pressure and it goes off. And I've done videos talking about trigger control, and I know that that's something that does not get as much conversation today as it should, with everybody, you know, out there doing all this crazy tactical stuff and all that. And it's fun, don't get me wrong, but we forget the basics. And if you don't use the fundamentals of marksmanship, it doesn't matter what kind of a gun that you have. You're trying to compensate bad technique with hardware. Yes, a light trigger can be more accurate if you're trying to do very precise shooting, particularly with pistols. But if you are talking about a self-defense firearm, you don't want a super light trigger for the simple fact, under stress, you've got adrenaline going, and ask police officers, ask people that have been in the military, especially those that have been in combat, and they'll tell you, you know, that whatever that trigger weight is, you don't notice it when you press that trigger. And at the same time, if you have a trigger that's super light, you're running a risk there of firing a shot when you don't necessarily want to. And that's been one of the criticisms against SIG, some of the stuff that they have done, and all the controversy recently. I talked about recently with 320, and I think that they're not going to recover from this. You know, they're not going to recover the reputation, in my opinion. Again, the 320, it has a very short take up till you get to that wall right there, and then when you press that trigger, it goes. You know, it is a much lighter trigger than what is on the Glock, you know, than a Glock factory trigger. But, you know, some people say that that could be a contributing factor to it. I think that that is a very good possibility. The gun, as far as the trigger, you know, you can see it more as a competition weight trigger. In my opinion, I mean, there's a lot of people out there, I'm sure, that are going to disagree, but there again, everybody wants the pressure for a lighter trigger, a faster shooting gun, and these companies have responded. SIG has responded. One of the my favorites as far as trigger, out of the box trigger for striker fire, is Canic. Those guns have absolutely great triggers. They're super crisp, they're super light for a factory trigger. But we need to remember the purpose of that trigger is, you know, you don't want it too light. You need to have a balance. And I think that that's where Glock did get it right, with the balance on their triggers. But guys, I don't want this to turn into a rambling video. This is just a few of my thoughts. I think that the military is potentially regretting their choice of the SIG. I do believe that the Glock was a much better choice. And I think that they're hopefully realizing that now. But guys, that's just a few of my thoughts, and let me know yours down in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the rest of my channel. Subscribe if you're new here. Leave me a comment down below, and we'll see you next time.